Everyone gives out candy on Halloween because parents were afraid of sadists. An average jack-o'-lantern bucket carries about 250 pieces of Halloween candy. 248, 249, 250. It's about 9,000 calories and only 3 pounds of sugar. But Halloween wasn't always about candy, if you can believe it. Even just 100 years ago, eating candy during Halloween wasn't even a thing. That means no Reese's Cups, no Milky Ways, no Kit Kats, and no heated debates over candy corn. Instead, Halloween originated from an ancient Celtic festival called Samhain, where people lit bonfires and wore costumes to ward off spirits. And trick-or-treating we adopted from a medieval custom called guising, where children would dress up and go door to door offering songs and prayers in exchange for food and money. In fact, trick-or-treating is a relatively modern concept in America. It didn't really make its way here until the 1920s or 1930s, and even then, it still took a solid decade for it to catch on nationwide. Trick or treat, smell my feet. So what were kids doing going to random people's houses at night? Basically, adults were having their own parties on Halloween, bobbing for apples and eating popcorn balls. Maybe they would dress up. And during all this, kids would dress up too and run around and prank everyone.
Putting toilet paper all over their windows.
And candy still hadn't even entered the picture at this point. Instead, kids were offered a thrilling bounty of coins, nuts, and fruits, which sounds oddly similar to every cabinet in my grandparents' house. On the plus side, kids sometimes did get cookies, cakes, and toys too, so it wasn't completely lame. So how did candy finally trick its way into our pillowcases? In the 1950s, candy companies finally wised up and started marketing their products as a cheap and convenient answer to demanding trick-or-treaters. It worked. Candy companies started making smaller candy bars all of a sudden, and soon enough, if you weren't giving out candy to trick-or-treaters, all the sticky-fingered kids in the neighborhood were steadily learning to skip your doorstep on Halloween. But it was really in the 1970s that candy became the golden standard in Halloween fare. And it was all because murder. Sort of. The 1970s brought the satanic panic, and there was mass hysteria over Halloween sadists living next door and feeding kids homemade treats packed with poison and hiding razor blades. A legitimate concern. I mean, how well do you really know your neighbors? Even though it was largely urban legend, parents were freaking out. So packaged store-bought candy became the official replacement because feeding your kids tons of sugar is a lot better than them biting into a knife. This makes October big business for candy companies, but no one sees a bigger spike during the season than candy corn, because surely it's the only time of the year anyone is ever buying those divisive, waxy little triangles. Oddly enough, candy corn's been around for over 100 years, long before kids were screaming at their neighbors for candy on the last night in October. Candy corn was invented in the 1880s by George Renninger, and today, 35 million pounds are produced every year, even though only about 49% of Americans like it. I'm sorry, these are delicious, and if you disagree, you're a monster. Too much candy corn. I'm gonna throw up. As far as the other Halloween favorites go, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups have been around since 1928 and were a natural fit for trick-or-treating because peanut butter and chocolate. The Milky Way launched into orbit in 1923, Kit Kats were first sold in England in 1935, and Skittles didn't make their way into America's jack-o'-lanterns until 1982, after they were invented in the UK in 1974. Today, a quarter of the candy sold annually is bought specifically for Halloween. Americans spend just about $6 billion on Halloween every year. That is a frightening amount of candy. So much chocolate in my teeth. Of course, there's still the occasional neighbor who tries to give out pencils or apples. Really. But those houses are bound to get toilet papered, because there's nothing like that feeling of getting a king-size candy bar on a spooky Halloween night while dressed as a Spice Girl in a winter coat.